Welcome, everyone, to Buddha's Center. So wonderful to be here today on a Sunday. On any day, it's wonderful to be somewhere and to be able to talk about the stages of the path to enlightenment that Lama Tsongkhapa and Tisha, the Nalanda Pandits, and Lord Buddha, if we look at where it all traces back to, were so kind to present to us in our world. And it's amazing that in the billions of human beings in the universe, we're among the few that have the opportunity to learn how to get rid of our afflictive obstructions and our obstructions to omniscience. And by looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, we can be assured that we have all of the information necessary and all of the stages necessary explicitly and then implicitly with some of the more subtle teachings for us to become a complete Buddha and to become a complete Buddha even in this lifetime, as we see Jetsun Milarepa was able to do by relying on the first topic of the Lam Rim, dependence upon the spiritual teacher, dependence upon the Lotsawa Marpa. So before we go any further, let me begin by setting a proper motivation. And we know that the great masters say that there are two things that are important that happen when there's a teaching. First, setting an initial proper motivation. And then lastly, making a proper dedication prayer. So I'll begin by setting a proper motivation from my side. And that will be by reciting a verse from the Sanche Molang, the King of Aspiration prayers, and the prayer of noble conduct. La iki dan le dan ne jin ge zhe ben da da mi iki nan dan zhe wa gong ji zhe zha nan ji zang ba dan che ge de da ji zhi den do. In the language of the gods, nagas, and yaksas, in the language of demons and humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. And we know that the Dharma that we're listening to today stems from Lord Buddha, from Buddha Shakyamuni. And Lord Atisha was so kind to summarize the teaching that we're going to talk about today into one stanza that says, understand there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their characteristics, their individual meanings. And then Lama Tsongkhapa wrote the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment and the great treatise on the stage of the tantric path to enlightenment to elucidate the meaning of that one beautiful stanza. And that stanza contains all of the teachings Lord Buddha ever gave for every being of every capacity to be able to achieve their individual goals that all lead to one result, lead to one destination, and that's Buddhahood. One vehicle in the end that leads to complete Buddhahood. This is the Dharma that we'll be proclaiming in the language of all today. This clear, concise Dharma that doesn't leave anything out, that includes all of the stages of the path to enlightenment for beings of three capacities. We're so fortunate to be presented with this Dharma. Now that I've set the motivation from my side, now you think about bringing all sentient beings here as your guest. You know that it's somewhere that makes sense to bring them because I've told you, one, that I'm going to proclaim what I'm talking about in the language of all beings. And two, that the subject matter that I'm speaking of is the teachings for beings of three capacities. That is the subject matter that show all levels of spirituality and show all the things to all beings they need to do in order to get rid of rebirth into the lower realms, in order to get rid of rebirth altogether within cyclic existence, in order to become Buddhas. And we're so fortunate that this is the Dharma that we're listening to today. And we know that this Dharma can be relied upon, and it's a place that you should bring all sentient beings. We know that the Buddhas want to bring all sentient beings to the state of complete Buddhahood, and do so by teaching the truth of reality. But they have to do so in a variety of different ways to each individual's capacity. And we know that the Dharma that's being presented here is the kind of Dharma that appeals to and can transform every kind of being at their own individual level, whatever their capacity is. We want to become Buddhas because this is how we'll realize all of our own goals, as well as all sentient beings' goals. We want to be free from suffering. We want to have bliss. And it's in dependence upon, relying upon the Bodhisattva path that we'll be able to achieve complete freedom from the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience that keep us from having freedom, that keep us from having freedom from cyclic existence and keep us from having the bliss of omniscience. The afflictive obstructions keep us in cyclic existence, and the obstructions to omniscience keep us from being the most reliable guide in the universe full of bliss. So if we want to have bliss and freedom from suffering and want to become the most reliable guides in the universe, it's necessary for us to, in contrived ways, start to manipulate our mind, transform our mind into a state of kind of a pure mind that puts others' needs before their own, recognizing the absence of inherent existence of action, agent, and object. We want to transform our minds into a mind like that, because it's a being who has a mind like that, who has entered the door into the Mahayana practice. It's a being who has this kind of day and night motivation to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, that enters into a Mahayana, that makes one a bodhisattva. When one has this motivation day and night, one is a bodhisattva. This kind of motivation day and night to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, to be able to put others' needs before your own, to be able to want all beings to have happiness and the causes of happiness, and all beings to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. This intense motivation that occurs for the bodhisattva day and night is something that is caused, is something that has conditions for its arisal. There are mental bases for the arisal of this beautiful mind that never stops occurring. And those mental bases have to be in place in order for us to transform into bodhisattvas. Because the only way we become bodhisattvas is by generating bodhicitta. And we can only generate bodhicitta if we ourselves have renunciation, a desire to emerge from cyclic existence, because of knowing what cyclic existence is very, very clearly. And recognizing just that freedom from cyclic existence alone doesn't fulfill all of our own needs. So it's from the renunciation, it's from a supercharged renunciation that bodhicitta even can occur. But it's from kind of the selfish standpoint where we're thinking about ourselves and realizing that even by just getting rid of the afflictive obstructions, we can't have bliss all the time. This triggers us into what is the method to achieve not only freedom from suffering, but bliss. And we've come to find out it's putting others' needs before our own, becoming the most reliable guides in the universe. And by doing so, and by engaging in this path, it's a path that dependently originates our mind forever into a mind of bliss, reliability, perfect wisdom, perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect skillful means, perfect power. It just dependently originates into that because we've created only those things within our mind, and that will dependently originate into that, and gotten rid of all of the things in our mind that are the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience that keep us from having the experience of freedom from suffering and bliss and reliability 24 hours a day forever. Samsara has no beginning but has an end. Nirvana has a beginning but no end. Buddhahood has a beginning but no end. So we have to mature our minds through a process, and we start to meditate on what that process would be, analytical meditation, and think about how would I get Bodhicitta. Oh, I would get bodhicitta by having renunciation. How would I get renunciation? I would get renunciation by meditating on the downfalls of cyclic existence and coming to find out that the final, kind of subtle renunciation is renouncing that self-grasping ignorance that is the origin that gives rise to all of the various types of suffering within cyclic existence. So when we're doing this kind of analysis, we see that we have to create causes that are concordant with their results, conditions that would serve as conditions for results that we want. So now we start to act as if. We start to leave imprints within our mind that will give rise to our eventual bodhicitta, that will give rise to our eventual Buddhahood. But we have to take our small steps that we can now. And the more and more we familiarize our minds with trying to contact all sentient, come into contact with all sentient beings and love all sentient beings, have compassion for all sentient beings, the more we start to turn our mind little by little, little bit by little bit, towards a mind that's just full of love and compassion, with an extraordinary attitude that wants to take upon oneself the task of freeing all sentient beings from suffering and a state where there's not happiness. So all of these things occur, through process. We know that bodhicitta occurs from the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And we know that it also occurs from equalizing and exchanging self with others. And we can put these practices together and generate this mind. But there's so many bases for the mind to be able to generate, even within the stages of those beautiful, holy, enlightened practices. There's so much to do. There's so many moments in a day. So now we're taking the moments that we have and really trying to precisely direct each moment towards the goal of Buddhahood. And the only way that we can direct our mind truly at Buddhahood is to try to direct our mind at wanting all sentient beings to be Buddhas, and wanting to be the one that leads all sentient beings to that state of Buddhahood, and wanting to become Buddhas. Because when we become Buddhas, then and only then can we become reliable. And then and only then will we never suffer again and only have bliss. So we create superficial, kind of contrived things within our mind, facsimiles of ideas and attitudes within our mind, so that these facsimiles then transform into the real thing. This is what we're trying to do with our familiarization. Meditation goal means familiarization. We're trying to familiarize our mind more and more and more with a loving, compassionate mind full of wisdom. A mind that not only has this love and compassion, but sees that the person that you have love and compassion for is empty of inherent existence. The love and compassion is empty of inherent existence. You are empty of inherent existence. The teachings are empty of inherent existence. The Buddha is empty of inherent existence. Nirvana is empty of inherent existence. We have to be able to establish the 3 spheres while we're doing these practices, so we don't cling to them as having objective existence and just create a separate dimension of samsaric compassion and love and so forth that don't really direct at what we're looking it to direct to, or don't have the same potency, should I say, within the moment that it could. That's better. Not the same potency within the moment that it could. So here we're trying to think of these ideas that we are bringing all sentient beings here. I'm doing the same thing, creating in a contrived way so that I can eventually be Buddha and be the most reliable guide. So now I'm pretending that I am because I know that this is the most reliable information. So it's not something that is, foolish thinking. It's kind of and I'm using imagination, but imagination along with reality. A lot of times we just imagine things that aren't reality, but we're using imagination with reality, with a reality that we just don't recognize yet because it's so concealed. So I think that it's clear when you think about it. I have to start making my mind more like the mind that I read about. I have to start making my mind in each moment, if I wanted to, every moment, day and night, want to seek transcendent liberation in terms of renunciation, and I want it, every moment, day and night, to want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, which is bodhicitta. If I actually want to have those kind of ideas, I have to start creating more and more moments where my mind, even if it's in a contrived way, works like a mind that I want it to become. Because our mind is clear and knowing. It's not static. It can transform because it's empty of inherent existence, and the mind's not naturally sullied. The stains are adventitious. They can be removed. Our mind can just dependently originate. Our mind can know and reflect whatever it is that dependently originates for it to know and reflect. So our minds can transform moment by moment because our mind's nature isn't static. This is, one aspect of our Buddha nature is the emptiness of our mind. The emptiness of our mental consciousness is the same emptiness of the Buddha's nature body's mental consciousness. The Buddha's Dharmakaya, the emptiness of the Dharmakaya, the, natural Dharmakaya, one of the natural Dharmakayas, that nature is the same exact nature of our mind right now. The Buddha's mind just isn't sullied. Ours is sullied, but our sullied is adventitious. These stains are adventitious. And that's how the Buddha was able to change from the state that we're in to the state of Buddha, because the Buddha's mind at that time was sullied, but the stains were adventitious, but the mind was empty of inherent existence. So therefore it wasn't static and didn't have a substantial reality that couldn't be transformed, that was permanent or unitary or something like this that couldn't be transformed. So we have this same thing that can be transformed. So as we make more and more of our moments into transforming moments, the more we're working on the other side of that Buddha nature, which is the maturing Buddha nature, the proliferating Buddha nature, this Buddha nature that is our mind can transform, our mind can mature. So we're fortunate to have these teachings, and we should share them with all sentient beings. And when we start to think in grander ways like this, this is how we start to be walking towards that door to be able to open into the Mahayana. So we set our motivation to Mahayana motivation. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And when we say this, it's very easy to say, but if we say this and then we try in our practice to bring all sentient beings here to connect with them, friends, enemies, neutrals, but thinking about hell, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, demigods, and gods, all these varieties of realms that are even seem preposterous at times when we read about them. But there's so many things that were preposterous to so many people when they read about them until they found out that, empirical reality showed, hey, there are these things in the rainforest that glow. There are so many things that seem like hidden phenomena to one person, but just haven't been discovered yet. So bring all sentient beings here as your guest. Have confidence that the material that you're bringing them here to listen is material that will teach them the truth of suchness. Imagine that every sentient being is led here. Even 10th level bodhisattvas are led here. And somehow my words will speak in their language and will speak to them to whatever it is they need to hear to be able to move to the next step on their path to eventually be able to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. And if they're on the 10th level, they no longer have afflictive obstructions, but they have obstructions to omniscience. And may they, through hearing this, be able to be transformed from the state of the 10th bodhisattva ground to a resultant state of a Buddha ground, the Buddhahood. And may the hell beings, the hungry ghosts, the animals, who are experiencing these horrific types of suffering of heat and cold and thirst and hunger and fear of being eaten, all of these sufferings we find in the lower realms of cyclic existence. May they hear whatever it is necessary to hear to be able to be transformed from that state into a state where they can meet with the Dharma and hear the Dharma and be receptive to the Dharma. And we know that in the hell realm, Buddha Shakyamuni generated bodhicitta and became a bodhisattva. So there is no place, in cyclic existence where, in the 6 realms of cyclic existence, where this can't occur. Where in the desire realm where this can't occur. So we have to think that, everyone that we're bringing here is able to hear something to give them some peace and move them along the path and the higher realms are, not as distracted, and can have some reality around their distractions and their desirous objects so that they can then get on the path. So this is what we should be thinking about when we do our practice. Don't make it stagnant and just read some prayers just for the sake of doing it. Make it alive. Make it, the way that these great practitioners describe it, because they're describing it so that you can discover it, and you will discover it. And this is how your mind will work day and night eventually. And if you've studied Dharma for long enough and applied the practices, you'll believe this is possible, because you'll see slight transformation. And if slight transformation is possible, multiplied slight transformation equals large transformation. There's just no way around that. And have confidence when you see these great lamas that they've had this transformation. And, to them, they're still seeking transformation and thinking, oh man, where I'm at now is so dissatisfying. So try to not be satisfied with where you're at spiritually, where you're at from a knowledge perspective. Get more wisdom from hearing so that you can have something more to analyze and then something more to meditate on. So this is what we should strive for, and make this something that's alive in our hearts that we can taste. We shouldn't just describe sugarcane. We should have tasted it, and then we can really be a reliable source on how to describe something that's sugary, this sugarcane. We can't just say, because somebody's explained sweetness to us, we really don't get the gist in a full way, because hearing doesn't really, until we've tasted something, create the tasting consciousness. We have to taste it, and then we can say, oh yes, this is what sugarcane tastes like. If it's just been described to us, and then we're just describing it, if we haven't tasted it, it doesn't have the same impact. And the way we start to taste it is by doing exercises like this, but knowing why we're doing exercises like this, meditating on why we're doing exercises like this. And when we meditate on the reasons why we're doing these things, it makes us more inclined to do them more, because it makes our mind set off like an alarm and say, hey, this makes sense to do what I'm doing, because I want to have happiness. I spend 24 hours a day trying to make my mind happy. I do all these physical things, I know, but it's really to make my mind happy. And the real way to make my mind happy is to get rid of afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. So why am I not spending more time doing what makes my mind happy, or what will make my mind happy, forever, instead of something that'll make my mind happy, I think, which is really just the suffering of change. So this is how we apply the teachings, and how they become alive within our being, and not just something external that we listen to or think is neat, or have some connection to, and it's something that we like to go do, but it doesn't really influence us in the moments of our life. And the more you engage in your studies, the more information you'll have to pull from, and the more you'll have an experience in life happen. We have varieties of experiences. So just think of all of the possibilities of attachments and hatreds and all of these things. And you'll have these varieties of experiences happen. And you'll have a mechanism within your mind that, through logic and reasoning based on your studies, will come up to give you better decision-making tools at that time. And if you don't have studies, and if you don't have this reflection, your mind won't have enough of it in it. And it really won't react with the Dharma to situations, with a Dharma kind of mental state. It'll just react, and maybe you'll reflect next week on, oh yeah, I had a tough week, and oh, I shouldn't have done that. Really, it was more of the nature. It was just an appearance, and I, apprehended the appearance, and et cetera, et cetera. And I could have done better. I'm going to do better next time. And, unless you take it further than that and take those moments of the day, and harness some of those moments just to reflect, harness some of those moments to study and really, really know what this stuff means, really know what the view of emptiness means. It won't transform you enough to keep your attention, and you'll just move on to something else. So this is my advice to anybody who's new, who's just kind of starting. You get a little bit of a grip on it and you think it's neat for a while. But if you don't continue with your studies, you won't have those bells go off in your mind that kind of come alive from your studies, that will reinforce your studies through experience. Inference is great, but experience confirms inference. We have to realize that. We can, have inference is mistaken still, even if it's correct. A correct sign through inference is still mistaken because it's got conceptuality. It's not direct yet. So anyway, we really have to start to try to experience these teachings directly. So now we have all sentient beings here. Okay, sentient beings, and any beings that are not sentient beings are Buddhas. So that's easy. So we have all sentient beings here. So now let's do a practice and imagine again that you're leading all sentient beings in the practice, that you're connecting with all of them, and then in Kamala Shila's Stages of Meditation talks about it's very important not to just have these beings only that are kind of dots in a stadium. Those are fine too, once you've addressed real beings that that you've seen. Outside, I'm looking out a window, a bird, that is one that I'm seeing, worms I'm seeing. You can start to have these kind of connections throughout your day. Think about your day. What have I saw a bird, I saw a deer, you're connecting with beings that you can put into this bodhicitta field. So when you're doing this, remember that the beings that you're connecting with, you start with the real ones, and that's why you have your friends in the Lamrim. It says then go on to your strangers and then your enemies, because it's easier in that order. But all this talk is assuming you've done this kind of prior meditation on equanimity and neutrality. So these are just tips on things that you can do in your meditation. So bring real sentient beings into your bodhicitta field when you're thinking of bringing hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, gods. If you're like me, I've only seen humans and animals. So I start with that and then build upon it. And then you can make a stadium of dots, as they say sometimes. There's a lot of meditations, but I've heard this one quite a bit around you. So just make it real. So now imagine we're all doing practice together. So we're going to do what we always do. We're going to try to get our minds into kind of a less conceptual, busy place, and our minds into a more focused, fixed place. These are some techniques that you can use. Eventually, you really want to fixate on one thing, but the main thing that we're really trying to learn how to do is to focus the mind on what we're telling it to focus on. And this is a fixed meditation because we have a focal object specifically that we're not letting our mind waver from, ours and all sentient minds waver from. So this exercise that we do is kind of two benefit. One, meditating on the breath, the Buddha said, is good to get conceptuality down. And here, I don't know about any of you, but we have a lot of stimulation, and stimulation causes kind of busyness of mind, causes our mind to have a lot of things to run at and run away from. So it's good, the Buddha said, to use meditating on the breath to calm that down. And then when we do fixed meditation, we can meditate on the breath if we're trying to get shamatha or calm abiding. But also, it says, and we're going to get into the shamatha instructions on Thursday nights, by the way. I'm going right into a long instruction on how to get the 9 stages of calm abiding, of getting calm abiding, et cetera, et cetera. So we won't go into really too much of that right now. But in order to really be able to get your mind to see emptiness, it's got to be calm enough and clear enough. So calm abiding is necessary to be present in order for you to see emptiness directly. It has to be joined with special insight, wisdom, through analysis you arrive at, and then that analysis turns actually into a kind of a shamatha, and springs, turns into a shamatha. It's interesting. You think your shamatha then kind of meets with it, but your calm abiding becomes so refined that it actually turns into this pliancy of mind and body, into a shamatha that's conjoined with a calm abiding that's conjoined with special insight. So I said I wasn't going to go into this, but here I go. So so right now we're trying to work on getting a mind in kind of some small ways that would be calm enough to be able to build virtue from, to be able to listen to these teachings well from, to not have any of the three faulty pots while we're here. And if our mind is calm and we have introspection, the spy in our mind kind of checking throughout the teaching, because we've calmed our mind down at the beginning of it, we can check and make sure, hey, are you really listening to this teaching? Because I've told my mind, okay, at the beginning of the teaching, I told my mind to focus on breathing in, breathing out, counting the breath, and it'll be Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation form, about the size of your thumb, at about eye height, beautiful, radiant, and glowing, but in a fixed form, not moving around in any way whatsoever. So it'll be breathing in and out and the counting of the breath in Buddha Shakyamuni in that fixed form. So now in this exercise, we're telling our minds, this is what we want our minds to focus on. Our focal object are these four: breathing in and out, counting, and Buddha Shakyamuni. So now we're trying to get this skill and get our minds calmed down with the breathing and get more focused in on what we're telling it to do, so that then as we go through the next part of the teaching, our mind remains, okay, now mind, I want you to focus on the teaching. And I don't want you to half listen or forget the teaching, or have your ears shut and not listening at all. And I don't want you coming in and with all these ideas that you normally have that mix everything up. I want you to just listen to the teaching. And you're going to take this skill that I'm talking about now, where you're checking your mind to see what's going on with I'll explain that in a second, into the teaching, where you're checking your mind to see what's going on. So how are you checking your mind to see what's going on? So you've established the focal object. In this case, it's the four things: breathing in and out, counting, Buddha Shakyamuni. Okay, so the focal object is established. So mindfulness is not forgetting that, not forgetting the focal object. So you're supposed to just tie it right there in your mind. So when we do calm abiding, or we do this meditation, it's bringing the mind inward. It's not focusing with our eyes on something and staring at it. It's bringing the mind inward. We're doing meditation with our mental consciousness. So this mental consciousness is the thing that we're using to focus. So we have our mind that's focusing on just the breathing in and out and the counting in this front generation form of Buddha Shakyamuni. And there's this thing called introspection that's like a spy that's seeing, hey, is that what you're doing? And there's various forms of not doing what it's told, the mind not doing what it's told. There's one where it scatters around, or can be excited, just generally moving, busy, thinking, scattering, even if it's to a virtuous object. It's not the one you told it to scatter to or to go to. You told it just to focus on these things, like sit. And if it doesn't sit, it's not doing what you said. It's got to be doing exactly what you said. So any kind of moving away with discursive thought from those four things is one side of the problem. We'll get into more details on Thursday nights. And then the other side of the problem is, kind of a lethargy, laxity. These aren't all synonymous words, but these are all things that kind of occur under the umbrella. And it's where your mind isn't bright. So it's not clear, it's got at its coarsest level of darkness, but its most subtle level, it looks just like calm abiding. It just isn't. It's just a subtle step away from calm abiding. And it has so many of the elements that calm abiding does. Many meditators have messed that up. And the only way you won't mess it up, if you ever could get there, I'm not, is by knowing exactly what to look for with detailed instructions within these texts. And having a good teacher who can kind of guide you once you're at higher levels of meditation, so that you don't, mess it up. So you have these two things that can occur where there's a dullness of mind, and dullness can be very blissful. And that's not what you're looking to do, but it can be very blissful. And you have to know what to look out for. And excitement is just so distracting that's kind of the first easiest thing to kind of punch out, when you're looking at it. What's the problem here? It's really obvious when the mind's doing other than, the four things in this case. It becomes obvious if you have any kind of introspection going on. But the subtlety, as you get deeper and deeper into meditation, and a bliss that can kind of start to occur, that it can be something that can guide you down the wrong path into thinking there are states of kind of realization that have occurred that haven't. So it's a problem in terms of getting, your mind clear and calm enough, but it's a problem at a very, very subtle level because it can make you just fall off track altogether. You think you're doing such a good thing, and if you don't have the meditation instruction right, it can send you down a track altogether wrong. And it can be blissful, and it can really make you waste your life. So you've got to be careful with practicing shamatha, practicing calm abiding, and make sure that you have your studies right next to it. Rinpoche always said, first and foremost, studies, analysis, because if you don't have study and analysis, all kinds of funky stuff happens in our mind. Think about it. We can just take a substance and our mind can think everything's purple or different, Just think about how easy it is for our mind just to kind of shift, how easy it is for our mind to be fooled. And I don't even mean just about inherent existence. Just think about how we can just fool our minds into whatever the next thing is that gives us bliss, and how lost we can get in conventional reality, worldly things, because they give us a kind of sense of happiness and sense of bliss with respect to the object. Well, meditation with respect to the object of meditation can do the same thing, where it gives us this bliss and this happiness that's distraction. That isn't a stage that we're looking for to sit on. It's a stage actually we're looking to run from. So this is just some advice. I hope you get to have this problem, and then you'll say, oh yes, is this real? Is this experience that I'm having real? Is this grounded? Is this clarity? Is this the brightest light in the room mixed with, the calmest thing that could possibly be, in terms of your mind? Is it as bright and calm as it could possibly be? Calm like a vajra, like a diamond, hard and stable, but also illuminated and brilliant. So you have this spy in your mind, seeing if any of those faults, which isn't illuminated or brilliant, kind of sinking or dark, and the other side is just busy and unstable, are occurring. And then if they are, mindfulness snatches the focal object back and puts it right where it's supposed to be, in your forefront of your mind, because it's inward and it's inward. So you've told your mind, these are the things. Mindfulness somehow lost it. Introspection cued mindfulness to grab it. And that's how you do this meditation. So moving into the teaching, this exercise that we're doing, now you tell your mind, I'm going to listen really thoroughly to this teaching. I'm not going to have any of the faults of the pots. Now you're listening to the teaching calmly, chill, you don't have to like this, but you have a little spy in your mind saying, is my mind wandering? I watched it happen. I did, a couple classes straight with Geshe Dojidamdu today. And I watched my mind, and it was so funny because it was during a story of him. I watched my mind kind of going off into a distance. And then he does a lot of question and answer. So it's never good to let your mind wander off into a distance, because he's requiring you to answer, hand rate, so it's never a good idea not to be listening well. And I had a panic. It wasn't even in a question, but I had introspection right in the middle of my class today occur. And I panicked because he was just telling a story, one I'd heard a million times before. not a million, but quite a few. But I realized, like, well, what if there was an introspection, just set an alert off, and I honed right back in. So this is why I'm sharing it with you today. It's not because of, all these years I have. Today, I had this experience I'm sharing with you in a class, that started, very, very early this morning, that I'm just so grateful to be able to have, because having the Dharma more and more and more in classes, more and more and more, and studying with a couple of very other qualified teachers, I just really I see how this just springs, and it becomes more spontaneous, and less kind of exertion and effort to do things like, going from class to class to class. And I look back on that would have just been torturous. Even when I loved the Dharma, I did. But I'll tell you, after the class, I just wanted to take a ride. I just wanted to just do something, that was just, okay, we used to say, let's just turn on something stupid. I remember this kind of idea. And now turning on something stupid just feels so stupid. It's interesting. And I just literally will probably get up and, anyway, go look at, something. I do stupid things regularly still. But there's hope. There's so many teachings out there that seem like it's like 3 kalpas away. And, I just want to, if you practice the Lam Rim and you do it long enough, year after year after year, not week after week or month after month, year after year, decade, 2, things start to happen. Not like you see Buddhas everywhere. But you start to have your mind be more realistic and have a sense of ease that was certainly not present before. So let's all imagine that we're breathing in and out, counting and focusing on Buddha Shakyamuni just for a few moments, just to kind of get our minds down to a more realistic level. And on Thursday night, we're going to talk about why Buddha Shakyamuni, or why a Buddha, why not something else. I found some really, Meditation on Emptiness has some incredible information about shamatha, and you combine it with Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise and Stages of Meditation by Kamala Shila, and Pabonka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, and then some of Asanga's stuff. And we're really just really so fortunate. Okay, so let's do this meditation on a being who has gotten rid of all faults, only has excellent qualities. And this is a being who we will have the exact realizations of, because we have Buddha nature. All Buddhas, all sentient beings will become a Buddha. We're sentient beings. Therefore, we will become Buddha, a Buddha, not Buddha Shakyamuni, separate consciousness, but 2 perfect consciousnesses. When we become perfect, we'll have a perfect consciousness. Buddha Shakyamuni will have a perfect consciousness. This is it. We will perfect our consciousness. Okay. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni becomes alive, looking into your eyes with love and compassion, so proud to see you here today. He's finally seeing beings engaging in the teachings that he came here so compassionately to give, to show everyone how to be free from suffering, show everyone how to achieve Buddhahood, where there's bliss and complete perfect wisdom, perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect skillful means, perfect power, perfect reliability. Imagine Buddha Shakyamuni looking into your eyes. We're so fortunate to have met with these teachings. And now imagine Buddha Shakyamuni is so full of bliss that there's an eruption taking place, and ordinary appearances begin to be abandoned. And this Buddha Shakyamuni that you were visualizing in just this single form, now suddenly there's an eruption that takes place, and fully alive, you start to see the entire merit field in the space in front of you. Imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni has been containing the entire merit field the entire time. The whole time, Buddha Shakyamuni has been holding the merit field in. This is a meditation called All in One. You're imagining Buddha Shakyamuni had been containing the entire merit field, and now the merit field now begins to emerge in the space in front of you. And as we said before, you can imagine one by one as you say the names, or you can imagine just kind of all at once in a spontaneous arisal. And you imagine that all of this occurs from emptiness, from the lack of inherent existence. So you're imagining that this occurrence is empty of inherent existence. You're empty of inherent existence. All of the merit field is empty of inherent existence. So you're recognizing this reality and recognizing that from this kind of emptiness, this occurs. From this lack of inherent existence, this occurs. So now imagine that all the holy beings are beginning to fill the space in front of you, imagining His Holiness the Dalai Lama sitting on a Vajra throne supported by snow lions, so happy, smiling. You've ever looked into the eyes of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, it just captures your heart, takes your breath away. Imagine that he's looking into your eyes, so happy you're engaging in the studies of the Nalanda tradition, engaging in the study of Lama Tsongkhapa. Imagine, you're right in a room with His Holiness and you're telling him, I'm studying Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And I'm studying some of the, great treatises by the Nalanda Pandits. And I'm doing this and I'm trying to meditate. And imagine you're just in a room alone with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and how His Holiness would react if you told him that news. And not news that, I have this bad and this, and can you give me a blessing? And can you touch me on the head? This news that you're actually engaging in a path that will give rise to a result of your happiness and freedom from suffering. Because the Buddha doesn't wash away negativities, remove suffering with his hands. His spiritual realizations aren't transferred. It's just by teaching the truth of suchness. And the Dalai Lama hears you're learning about the truth of suchness from qualified lineage. And imagine how happy that'd make him. And that's how he's looking in your eyes. That's the smile he has on his face when you're imagining him in the merit field. You're imagining him in the room with you. It's just now you're imagining you're in a room and you're relating to each of these beings individually with such warmth. It's not a stadium. It's relating to as if you have a family reunion of all the people you really, really want there, that are all there in the room. And it's a real small room. It's a kind of a small room. It's intimate. That's the experience that you're trying to have with this merit field, an intimate experience of closeness. So please make this an actual kind of feeling that you have, just like you were in the room with these beings. Because when you call them in the merit field, it's just your karma blocking it. And this is something we can study later. So imagine now Kensar Geshe Wandak. So easy for me to imagine. Every time that I'm talking or giving a teaching, I just feel like he's right here, because everything that I'm saying has at its root everything that he said to me over and over and over and over again, through thousands of teachings that he gave me. I just feel so fortunate and blessed that I just know, how just I just know how much he wanted me to continue teaching and asked me to continue teaching. And because I'm doing that, I imagine that how Rinpoche would be kind of processing that in the room with me, looking at me, and I'm saying, oh, Rinpoche, Kensar Rinpoche, you asked me to do this. This is what we've done. We taught Panchen Sanadrapa's Bodhicitta. We went through, we're going through the source of all my good. And, we went through all of these, different parts. And we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And I'm enrolled in the Nalanda master's course. And I'm really, really trying to, take these teachings and put them into my life. And I think about Rinpoche being in the room with me and how that would affect him in terms of the relationship that we had. And I knew that all he cared about was me doing the things that I just said. And I think about how he would look at me intimately, right in my eyes, just like when I'd look into his eyes when I was doing his dialysis, and he would just smile at me as if I was just handing him a beautiful bouquet of flowers. I think like that when I think of the merit field in the best way that I can. And this is what it means when we, in that third preparation, when we sit down and really see if our mind's clear, really generate, try to generate and even contrive refuge in bodhicitta based on reasoning, to see if our minds are ready to have this kind of connection, this kind of intimate connection, this why these beings are so special to us, why they should be these beings that we would, be able to call into a room and they'd come and we couldn't see them, how that could be real. We have to kind of solidify it first. And then it becomes more and more real to us. So imagining Kensur Geshe Wanda, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, imagining Demalocha Rinpoche, Kensur Lobsang Jatso, or imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu, Umzula Geshe Aga, Geshe Mala, Tenzin Ladrin, Jeffrey Hopkins, imagining Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Chado Rinpoche, Ani Tupten Chodron, all these beings, any beings you consider enlightened beings, everyone has their own personal practice. So you have your own merit field, your own beings you're connected to. So imagine those beings right there that you've connected to and can connect, have connected to and have passed and connect to now. Imagine first those gurus, those lamas who are inseparable from the root deity in the space in front of you. Now you start to imagine the beings in the various lineages, beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga and Basu Bandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha and Lama Salingpa and Atisha and Drontompa, imagining all those beings of the extensive deeds lineage in the space in front of you, filling in, imagining the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Aryadeva and Shantideva and Chandrakirti, all of these holy beings, Baba Vega, Chandrashita, Kamalashila, all of these holy beings in the space in front of you. Again, imagining Lama Salimpa and Atisha and Dron Tompa, imagining the beings of the lineage of blessings passed down, Vajradhar and Saraha and Machipa and Tilopa and Naropa and Losawa Marpa and Milarepa and Gampopa. We're so fortunate to be connected to this holy lineage. All of these beings that came to teach us exactly how to realize the nature of our mind, how to seal our mind with its nature and look at it and understand the non-duality of subject and object. We're so fortunate to have these teachings in our world where we can come to slowly understand them through inference and then directly realize them. We're so fortunate. A yogi dwells in non-discursiveness, but has to arrive there through analytical reasoning, as Chandrakirti says. We're so fortunate we have the analytical reasoning so that we can then dwell in that non-discursive state, like the yogi that Chandrakirti talks about in the entrance to the middle way. We're so fortunate. Imagining Dron Tompa there getting past the holy Lamrim lineage that we're studying down from Lord Atisha, his root guru, who he served and took care of so well. Imagining now the old Kadampa lineages, the three, imagining the holy beings of the Nyingma tradition, Padmasambhava, Longchenpa, imagining the Sakya tradition, Satya Konga Nyingpo and Sakya Pandita, and imagining the holy beings of the Kaji lineages, such as the Karmapas and the Galupa lineages, Lama Tsongkhapa, Kirtubje, Jelsubje, Panchen Sanandrapa, Jayan Cheba, Jitsumba, Pubajok, Gonja Jimmy Wambo, Janja Rilbi Dorje, the seventh Dalai Lama, imagining all of these holy beings, Jayan Sheba, in the space in front of you. We're so connected to these beings through all of these writings that we're able to read and so forth that help us to move closer to the truth of suchness. And hopefully we'll be bodhisattvas when we see emptiness and on the track to Buddhahood. And we'll reach that first bodhisattva ground independence upon these completely profound instructions that we've been led to by these beings that I've just mentioned. Imagine the highest yoga tantra deities, performance tantra deities, action tantra deities, all the 35 Buddhas. Imagining all the protector deities, small scope protectors, Vaishravanas, medium scope protectors, Kala Rupa, Dharma Raja, the great scope protector, Mahakala, all the Dharmapalas, imagining them in space in front of you. We're so connected to these beings. We're so fortunate. Take a moment to recognize that you and all sentient beings are empty of inherent existence. Your minds are empty of inherent existence. All of the holy beings we just mentioned are empty of inherent existence. Their minds are empty of inherent existence. Sit with this confidence for a moment that your mind has the same nature as the Buddha's mind. Now, as we come out of this kind of idea in this moment, we recognize that although our minds have the same nature of emptiness of inherent existence as the Buddha's mind, at this current time, our minds haven't matured to perfection. They can mature to perfection because they're empty of inherent existence. So we have to look at exactly what we need to do to mature our minds that are empty of inherent existence. And now we'll read the Heart Sutra with this in mind, because what we'll need to mature our empty minds into perfection is the pathways that make the maturation possible, or make it occur, the maturing occur. So we look at the Heart Sutra and we see that explicitly it teaches the emptiness that we speak of, the emptiness of inherent existence, of the mind, the Four Noble Truths, of the Buddhas, and so forth, of all phenomena. It shows that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, intrinsic existence, objective existence. All phenomena are empty of existing right within the object. But explicitly it teaches this, but implicitly it also teaches the 5 paths that are necessary for one to go through to mature this empty mind. And the realization of this emptiness of all phenomena is conjoined with the various ripening paths through the process of maturation. So we have liberating paths, the wisdom paths of emptiness, and ripening paths, practices of renunciation, bodhicitta, concentration, generosity, ethics, etc., that conjoin together through these 5 paths with the wisdom path. So we see the emptiness of inherent existence being taught and the 5 paths being taught, but the 5 paths being empty of inherent existence. So with this in mind, let's read the Heart Sutra. But just, it's so important, if you leave with one thing about emptiness today, it's so important that you leave with this idea that emptiness does not mean non-existence. It does not mean this. It does not mean that things don't exist. It means that they don't exist the way that we think that they do from their own side independently. And it's our grasping at them as having this independent existence that, grasping at them as having inherent existence that causes us to have bad kind of push and pull, being pulled towards things we're attached to and pushed away from things that we dislike. So it all is stemming from this misapprehension of phenomena, but we're not, seeing, something over there that to exist that doesn't exist. We're just seeing it to inherently exist. And we have to see that it exists through mere designation of thought. There's a basis of designation that I'm naming, just mere designation of thought. There's a basis of designation, but that basis of designation doesn't have any kind of participation, even at a, the tiniest level, in terms of having this kind of character of the name that I'm giving it. That's all subjective. So we believe that the thing has this objective existence where it exists right in the object. This name exists right in the object, and it is that. We don't see that there's any kind of subjective quality to that experience. But what the Heart Sutra is saying is that, yes, things exist, but they don't inherently exist. They only exist through dependent origination. And when we look at dependent origination, we see dependent origination of causes and conditions, the dependent origination of wholes and the parts, and then the dependent origination at the highest level, Madhyamaka Prasangika level, which is the dependent origination, which is mere designation of thought, mere imputation of thought on a basis of designation. So here, the Heart Sutra, when they're saying no, 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 it's bouncing off of the fact that there's already an establishment of the things, being empty of nature, and being empty of this nature. It doesn't say, and then it says no, 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 no. The no is referring back to the empty of nature. There is no inherent nature of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, etc. So the Buddha first actually says it, and then just says no, 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 no. The Buddha means like, you get it. So when I'm saying no, I mean there's no, inherent existence, no inherent nature. So this is how we read the Heart Sutra, while recognizing that in it are the 5 paths, and the 5 paths relate to the mantra Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha, because the first Gate is the path of accumulation, second Gate is the path of preparation, third Thang Paragate is the path of seeing, Parasangati is the path of meditation, and Bodhisoha is the path of no more learning. We can talk about that another time. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha of Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha monks and a great gathering of the Sangha Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One enters the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita addressed in this way? Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity and no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye, dhatu, up to no eye, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind, consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awakened to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha. 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 Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattvas, Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son, noble family, thus it is, O son, noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas were rejoiced when the Blessed One had said this. Venerable Shariputra, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Aga samara jasandara samara ya be de ata on gate gate paragate prasagate bediso ha papa ko jasanji gaye den bedoji she lobadoji mebadoji shewa doji dragi baji medobeja naji den gari so ha Gerin don jaji ju shewa da medun be jendan jawa dan dun ba dun jin bon zon zon joji daji de jan den da de le jo. I'll make a mandala offering. Last couple classes we've talked about this a bit. It's a request for teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas High, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Now, a prayer of refuge in bodhicitta in Tibetan. Sanye jadan zaji janan la janje badu dani jazuji dagi ji ji bezananji drala benji zanye drubajo sanye jadan zaji janan la janje badu dani jazuji dagi ji bezananji drala benji zanye drubajo sanye jadan zaji janan la janje badu dani jazuji Dagi ji ji bezonanji drala benji zanje dubajo. From Nagarjuna's Mulya Madhyamika Karika. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. From Sachen Kongan Yinpo's departing from the four attachments. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. Okay. Wonderful. So we have been looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment in great detail, and trying to cultivate some sort of practice around these 3 volumes. And that's what Rinpoche always encouraged us to do, and always encouraged me to do, is to take these, in English, 3 volumes, and take all of the teachings and take, everything that the Buddha said and figure out how to practice them, how to apply them to your daily life. So we're trying to look at the Lamrim Chemo in terms of how we practice it in our daily life, but while at the same time looking at it in the details that are in the specifics that are contained within the text. So this is why, it's going to take quite some time to go through it in this manner, because, as there are things that I find applicable, in terms of hints or helpful things that maybe I do that I've just, Rinpoche taught me that I don't even really know because it's just kind of been a thing I do. And I hear maybe somebody's, because I'm in contact with a lot of people these days. So I hear like people having struggles and asking questions about certain things. And realizing, in that moment, oh, well, this is something Rinpoche taught me. This, I'm not necessarily there in person, just hearing question and answer sessions, and also sometimes talking to people in person. And I'm seeing how some of the things that, because I spent so much time with Rinpoche, just kind of are obvious on how you apply things. Not all of the stuff. I'm not trying to say I'm the master practitioner of the Lamrim Chema. I'm not trying to say this. But there are some things at a course level that I like to share. And as I hear things in my daily life that people maybe struggle with or don't find just so obvious within the text, because maybe they didn't spend, 25 years with one of the greatest teachers to live, I think, oh, well, this is something I can share in class because maybe others could benefit from this. And so this is what I'm doing here, and why we get, to the section we're on and have like 10 minutes to talk maybe about the section that we're on. So We've been looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and we've gotten up to the medium scope section, and we call that the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity. I'm not going to go into a ton of description of that, but here we are smack dab in the first noble truth, where, in the section that's dealing with suffering, the varieties of suffering, looking at it in terms of the 8 types of suffering, which we've already gone through. And now we're in the 6 types of suffering. And I find the 8 types of suffering are really, easy to kind of get the gist with and be like, yeah, that makes sense. And, the 8th suffering, again, is appropriated aggregates. This is a little bit more like you need more, gisty stuff to get the gist of it. But I think when you get to the 6 types of suffering, you start to separate, out things that you really need to meditate on to have the realization and the effectiveness of this. So I think that, we've gone over this first type of suffering, which is the uncertainty. And we know that the uncertainty of cyclic existence is that it says, for those in cyclic, and from Nagarjuna's friendly letter, and all the 6 suffering quotes are from Nagarjuna's friendly letter. And then you have Sakya Randhawa's commentary, even in English, you can look at. But this fault of uncertainty, we see the root, and I want to always read these roots. For those in cyclic existence, there are no certainties, because wives become sons, mothers become wives, enemies become friends, and the converse as well. So we see this, the uncertainty of cyclic existence. And then it says, well, even in this life and vice versa, this can happen. So take that as a sign that if there is this beginningless births thing, and there are all of these varieties of karmas and potential relationships, you can see how one kind of karma, or 2 can change the whole thing from, your side and the other's side, who are in this case, your, enemy or friend or mother or wife or father for now. And maybe in this life could change in terms of enemies and stuff. But then there's this continuum, and at the end of your life, my life, I'm going to have, one karma that's going to ignite, and then some other karmas that are going to fill in some gap in some details afterwards. And then whoever is my wife or my mother or my father, when they're dying, are going to have one karma that throws them into a life, and then other karmas that have been accumulated since beginningless time to grab from, not just this life. And then it's just like lottery. Think about lottery of that, of beginningless lives, beginningless imprints, beginningless karma, beginningless virtue, beginningless non-virtue. And all of these things are potent to be able to give rise to, some of them, an entire type of life, and then the others to fill in the details of that. And what I did in this life and you did in this life might not have anything to do with all of that. And we might just collide in these other ways. That's the uncertainty, this collision that's so unexpected, because what we cling to normally in terms of the labels that we put on friends, enemies, neutrals, mom, dad, wife, husband, and we cling to this as having some substantial existence, some permanence. But this first suffering, Buddha teaches us, shows us that, wow, that's scary. That could happen. This could happen. This person I love so much, who I couldn't even imagine having the slightest harm come to, I could kill. That scares me. So this is, becomes a reality that forces you into a renunciation once you become convinced of it. That's the point of the first truth. The point of these, 8 and 6 and 3 sufferings is to convince you want to emerge from cyclic existence, because it's convincing material if you meditate on it. But you have to meditate on beginningless consciousness, and why mind would be beginningless, and why mind and body aren't the same, and why when this body dies, the mind goes forward, because the mind doesn't die. The mind is just in the nature of clear and knowing and temporal moments. And the mind doesn't, is in a house, but the house can change. And when we die, the mind goes on and the house changes. This body shucks, what we'll learn later, and the house changes, and I take on a new thing that I think is the object of mine. So it's a problem. So then we get into this fault of insatiability. And I think this is a really good section to, I know we've looked at it before, but I don't think we've looked at it in enough detail. And I think it's something we can all relate to so much. It's relating to it here on like a long-term level, beginningless time in terms of the quote. But think about how quickly dissatisfied in this life we can become, an untamed mind. It's so quickly dissatisfied. From Nagarjuna's friendly letter. So anyone, I'm so sorry. I promised myself I'd start doing this. See, mindfulness, introspection, just caught it. Okay, Jeff, you told yourself you were going to remind people. This is from the first volume of Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And we're on page 282. And it's in the section, chapter 18, on the 6 types of suffering, and etc. So unfortunately, we're going to be ending in a few minutes. But if I don't do this, literally turn your mic on and say, hey, Jeff, I'm going to be your spy of introspection from now on. And I'm going to cue you because yours isn't working very good today. I don't mind. I'm flexible and, I'm just training it out. I'm just training it out, grinding the training out. Sometimes it feels good, sometimes it doesn't feel good, but we have to just do it. We don't really have a choice. So why? Because each of us has drunk more milk than would fill the 4 oceans yet. Those in cyclic existence who act as ordinary beings are intent on drinking still more than that. So you don't stop definitely drinking more till you see emptiness. What? All the great stuff that you're doing. You have inferential valid cognition, sham abiding, calm abiding, and special insight. What? You still don't, what do you mean? Well, the only liberating path is this path of an Arya being. This is the only thing that can get rid of afflictions, the only thing that cuts them. Of course, these fruit, ripening paths push it along, but you need this wisdom to know that. And there's a footnote here, and I'm guessing that's the point that it makes. And I'm going to read just this paragraph, and then I'm going to pry myself away from the book. Yeah, really, really amazing. I remember even sitting translating for Rinpoche, and it would get to be like an hour in, I'd be looking at the clock, just looking at the clock, like it must be 6 hours by now. And now it is 6 hours by now, and I just really want to keep doing it. And that just shows that there's a shift, because what I was going to go do that was so important that I was looking at the clock wasn't anything that was significant. And this is so significant. So what a better attitude. Think about it. Each living being has drunk so much mother's milk in the past, yet without training on a path to liberation, will drink that much again in the future. This is just an example. When you reflect on how you have no lack of experience with the wonders of and suffering of cyclic existence, you should become disenchanted. You indulge in pleasures in pursuit of satisfaction, yet with worldly pleasures, you are never satisfied no matter how much you enjoy them. Hence, time after time, your craving grows, and on that account, you wander for ages through cyclic existence. For immeasurably long period of time, you'll experience intolerable suffering, which those pleasures will not ameliorate in the least. And this I remember reading before. And this is so important, that one just tragedy gets rid of all of the kind of merriments that you've had. And all of the feelings that, oh, this is such a great life, such a great time, and just one phone call, one thing, and just the rug is swept out from under you. And there's no more of that feeling anywhere to be found. The self of Jeff, when that phone call or that, that thing happens, the self of Jeff that's so happy and so ready to dance no longer is appearing that way. And it's just like that. I'm at a show I'm enjoying, and then I have to go do something, and the happiness goes down a meter. And because it was a suffering of change in cyclic existence, it would never go down a meter. I would somehow just to have continuous happiness from the thing, from the event, from the experience. But that meter, that kind of decibel change, is what makes it not good enough. And what makes it this thing that makes me so dissatisfied. And think if I take more of it, then that'll make me satisfied. And then more of it is disgusting. Like, oh my God, turn that off. Or that food, don't give me another bite. It's interesting how we become so dissatisfied with things if we have enough of it or we don't have enough of it. We have too much or not enough. It causes us dissatisfaction because the object itself isn't satisfying. Okay. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. There's grasping, you do not have the view. And I think it's so important. I read that every time twice because that's just has to reaffirm in our minds what our goals are. Our goals are the small scope, abandoning attachment to this life, the medium scope, abandoning attachment to cyclic existence, the great scope, abandoning, attachment to and the self-cherishing attitude, and wanting to become a Buddha. So we can check our minds to see. And if we want any of the goals in terms of, freedom from cyclic existence in this, if there's grasping at samsara, you have no renunciation. In order to get freedom from cyclic existence, which renunciation is a desire to have, you have to have the view. And in order to get Buddhahood, you have to have bodhicitta, supported by renunciation, and have the view. So you see how you can apply this one stanza to all three scopes and how applicable they are to your daily practice. And if you have the stanza sometimes on hand, you could just throw it at, worldly things, like, okay, is this going to work? If you're attached to this, spiritual practice really brings true happiness. At the cause of death, death will come, nothing can stop it. We don't know when it's going to happen. And the only thing that helps us is Dharma. Dharma is the spiritual practice. Is this thing going to help me? Is this thing going to make me happy? Is this thing going to prepare me for that moment I have to catch the wave to my next life, and a good one? Got to check our minds daily. And we try to create more moments and more moments through our concentration and through our calmness and through our studies, in which those moments are kind of injected with what we want the moment before we're going to die, when we have this grasping and craving kind of stir up a potential existence. Let's hope we're ready for that. Prayer for the flourishing of Tsongkhapa's teachings. Though he's the father, producer of all conquerors, as a conqueror's son, he produced the thought of upholding the conqueror's Dharma in infinite worlds. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. When in the presence of Buddha Entrighetu, he made his vow, the conqueror and his offspring praised his powerful courage. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. That the lineage of pure view and conduct might spread, he offered a white crystal rosary to the sage, who gave him a conch and prophesied. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. His pure view, free of eternity of destruction, his pure meditation, cleansed of dark fading and fog, his pure conduct, praised according to conqueror's orders, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Learned since he extensively sought out learning, reverend, rightly applying it to himself, good, dedicating all for beings and doctrine, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Through being sure that all scriptures, definitive and interpretive, were without contradiction, advice for one person's practice, he stopped all misconduct, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Listening to the explanations of the three Pitakas, realized teachings, practice of the three highest higher trainings, his skilled and accomplished life stories, amazing, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Outwardly calmed and subdued by the hearer's conduct, inwardly trusting in the two stages practice, he allied without clash the two stages of Sutra and Tantra. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Combining voidness explained as the causal vehicle with great bliss achieved by method, the effect vehicle, hard essence of 80,000 Dharma bundles. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. By the power of the ocean of oath-bound doctrine protectors, like the main guardians of the three beings paths, the quick-acting Lord Vaishravana, Karmayana, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. In short, by the lasting of the glorious Guru's lives, by the earth being full of good, learned, reverend holders of the teaching, and by the increase of power of its patrons, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. And now we'll make a mandala offering, keeping in mind that you and all sentient beings are making a mandala offering to all the holy beings in the space in front of you who no longer have afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience, and you're recognizing that yourselves, all sentient beings, are empty of inherent existence. The mandala offering is empty of inherent existence, and the merit field is empty of inherent existence, and the merit field is possible because of the emptiness of inherent existence. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Zandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. And we have to see that all phenomena has natural purity, whether it's sharp or rough, or soft, or appearing as coarse, gross, ugly, pus, or appearing as nectar and as incredible. All of these things have an evenness, have a purity of emptiness. They all have this same emptiness of inherent existence, just like our minds and the Buddha's mind. Any mistakes that I've made are not intentional, and I apologize for doing that. Any omissions or something I should have said, I really apologize. If I could have helped beings in a better way, I'm sorry. And it's because I have afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience, and I'm not the most reliable guide that occurred. May that be purified by this mantra, and may your and all sentient beings, body, speech, and mind be purified of negativity through imagining Vajrasattva in the space in front of you, inseparable from your root deity, from your root guru. I'm imagining Vajrasattva inseparable from Nanjo Khenso Geshe Wandak Rinpoche. And while I recite this mantra, imagine that light rays and nectars are showering down on you and all sentient beings and transforming into white ohms and red ahs and blue homes, and purifying yours and all sentient beings, body, speech, and mind, respectively. Om benza sata samaya manipulaya benza sata zeno vajisa dilme vazudagaya me vazubagaya me vanurag me vazavazeri me braja zavagama zuja me kidem jiyam guru hom ha 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 ho bhagavan sarva tata gata benza mama moka benza bhava maha samaya safa ahom ve. May we always be protected by Paul and Lama. Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Junjo Kala Rajamo Rama Jadaja Junjo Ruther the Hong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Junjo Kala Rajamo Rama Jadaja Junjo Ruther the Hong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Junjo Kala Rajamo Jadaja Junjo Ruther the Hong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Junjo Kala Rajamo Rama Jadaja Junjo Ruther the Hong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Junjo Kala Rajamo Rama Vajadaja Junjo Ruther the Hong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Junjo Kala Rajamo Rama Vajadaja Junjo Ruther Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Gala Rajemo Rama Vaja Daja Dunjo Ruda Hunjo. Anyone's experiencing any kind of obstacles to meeting with the Dharma, may they be removed immediately through the recitation of this mantra of Drapa Sunjit, the three wrathful protectors. Om Vajrapani Hayagriva Garuda Om Ve. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. Prayer for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who walks among us, Lord Buddha Chenrezig. We're so fortunate to have him in our world. May we have no obstacles to meeting with him, and may he abide in this world and not withdraw the emanation body, not withdraw the Nirmanakaya. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. And now a prayer of supplication to Nangyal Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche that I wrote 1 year after his passing on March 6th of 2023, called "A Complex Yogi Poses as a Simple Monk." Homage to Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om, Ah, Om, Om, Ah, Om, Om, Ah, Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like a teacher who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of 3 capacities. Now the sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. Sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness so they know who you really are. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for your patience. Sorry, again, I went a little bit over. And we will see you next time, hopefully on Thursday night. We're going to get into calm abiding and special insight, define those 2 things, and then get into, okay, what is calm abiding really? How do you get it? What do you need? Et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we'll see how it goes. Let's see if we can get some calm abiding around here, you know? Gosh. All right. See you then. All right. Take care.